You have dead Mexican citizens. These are legitimate questions. If we didn't ask him these questions, we should be run out of town.
Using our sources and reviewing documents provided to us over the past 4 months, we've been able to piece together a disturbing picture of where fast and furious guns have turned up so far. At a dozen seizures and crime scenes along the U.S. border and in Mexico. And documents obtained by CBS News indicate some of the weapons were recently found at a drug cartel shooting of a Mexican government helicopter.
When does it stop being law enforcement and start being a criminal enterprise? Innocent people are dying. I mean, artificially, they set up straw man sales to prove what? It's all under their watch.
Even insiders appeared awed by the scale. 6 months into the investigation in March of last year, a senior ATF attorney under the Justice Department commented, "Every time I read this case, I'm amazed at the amount of firearms we're talking about." Acting ATF Director Kenneth Melson and his deputy William Hoover were said to be briefed weekly on the investigation. ATF Special Agent John Dodson worried about all those guns hitting the streets.
I don't think anybody really fathoms how long we're going to be dealing with this. I mean, the gun is not going to go away. It's not a one-time use.
I'm fearful, not just my deputies, other officers, citizens in America, that we're going to be facing the barrels of guns that have been put in the hands of the most violent criminals in North America. And who's going to be held accountable?
A lot of people are going to get hurt with those firearms between the time we let them go and the time they're recovered again in a crime.
Give me an idea of the size and scope. I mean, we're talking about thousands of guns knowingly going south, so to speak. In your normal course of business, if you thought that there was a straw purchase happening, how many guns would kind of push you over the threshold to say, we better stop that?
Well, sir, I can tell you this. Prior to my arriving in Phoenix in December 2009, my entire career we have never walked a firearm. And as a matter of fact, even if one had gotten away from us, if it was only a prop which had been mechanically engineered so that it could not effectively fire a round, even if that got away from us, no one went home until we got it back.
Even just one gun?
Yes, sir.
And in this case, we have thousands of guns. Now, what was the goal here? I mean,
sir, I can tell you what I was told. I was told that the goal is to ultimately target and bring an entire cartel to prosecution.
But how were they going to do that? I mean, the suspected cartels were in Mexico, were they not?
Yes, sir, they were, and I have no idea how they planned to do that by this operation or how it was designed to function.
So was it the goal to knowingly and intentionally allow these guns to go into Mexico?
Was that the ultimate goal? Not as explained to me. Was that the rules in play to achieve what the goal that they had explained? Yes. We were mandated, let these guns go. Make no mistake, there was not a time we were out there on surveillance where we didn't have the forethought that these were going to be recovered in crimes. The next time we became aware of these guns would be when they were recovered at their final crime. Not whatever crime they might have done. It was the last crime that they commit, not they commit, but the person who has them commit, that they're recovered in. There may be 9 or 10 that the cartels have perpetrated with those firearms prior to that date, but that recovery date is when we'll learn about it. So ultimately, what was the main goal, as explained to me, was to get a cartel. The mission, what we were doing, what we were ordered to do every day, was watch the same guys buy the same guns from the same dealers who we told to make the sales, and then we'd sit back and wait for the traces. And when they came through from places in Mexico where it was definitively related to cartels, they were giddy.
Okay, they want centralization of power. They want more power for police, more power for security agencies. If they offered that package up front, openly, this is what we're going to do, there would be a reaction. People would say, this is a fascist state, we're not having this. But if you use a technique which I call problem, reaction, solution, you actually get people who would normally oppose that agenda to demand it happens. Problem, reaction, solution works like this. You create a problem in the world.
Their purpose is to come to the United States and take over. And the way they take over is very violent. We're seeing signs of people being tortured and brutally beaten all across the United States, not just along the southwest border.
How many hundreds or thousands of weapons did you allow to be purchased knowing that they were going to Mexico?
Sir, the purchase was being done by a criminal organization, a large-scale...
But you facilitated it. You allowed it, did you not? I mean, that was part of the program. Allow these straw purchases to happen so that the guns could end up in Mexico. And you know in 2009 that that's happening.
Sir, again, the goal of the organization, the goal of the investigation was to disrupt and dismantle the entire
I know, I understand the goal, but you were purposely, the problem is you're purposely, knowingly allowing the guns to go to Mexico. And you have information in 2009 that it's being successful, yet you never put a stop to it. It's meeting the goals and intentions you laid out in this memo in January of 2010. And it continued on. And consequently, there were thousands of weapons that ended up in Mexico killing people.
More than 900 drug-related murders in January alone. That's well above last year's monthly average.
Mexico and that raging war there against the powerful drug cartels. The violence is worse than ever. In January, reported to be the deadliest month yet. And on one day alone, there were 69 murders.
So you create a problem. You need someone, however, to be blamed for it, so the real culprits are not named. So you have the Lee Harvey Oswald syndrome. You want the patsy.
Many of the guns used to commit murders here in Mexico are bought in the U.S. by so-called straw buyers, American citizens, who are paid by the Mexican traffickers to purchase high-powered weapons and ammunition for them.
Well, I think the unfortunate fact is we don't have adequate control over both the enforcement of our existing gun laws and the sale of weaponry to people. We have a lot of loopholes. The gun show loophole is one example.
This is a national problem. Guns from all over the United States, not just the southwest border, are going into Mexico. This is a national problem. Guns going south is a national problem. Drug cartels' influence in the United States is a national problem. This is not just a border. This is a national problem.
Officials say more than 90% of all the traffickers' weapons are obtained from dealers and gun shows in the U.S., where firearms laws are more lenient than in Mexico.
This is an AK-47. This is one of 38 AK-47s that were purchased here in Arizona that were destined to Mexico.
President Obama even has blamed America for a lot of the violence in Mexico, saying 90% of all the weapons going into Mexico, with the 40,000 people who have been murdered, killed down there with the cartels versus the government, are a result of America.
This war is being waged with guns purchased not here, but in the United States. More than 90% of the guns recovered in Mexico come from the United States, many from gun shops that line our shared border.
Blaming America. And lo and behold, what we find out is that the ATF, Eric Holder, he hasn't fully answered these questions, but the U.S. Attorney from Arizona, at least, Dennis Burke, has approved this, giving guns to the cartels. Literally, law enforcement, the top prosecutor in our country, allows giving the guns to criminals, people that were actually fighting. And now for years, likely, we're going to see cops, deputies across at least the southwest border be in gunfights, maybe even be killed by these very weapons that our own government has given the bad guys.
You then get the media to report your problem in the way you want it reported, and you're looking for a public reaction of something must be done, this can't go on, what are they going to do about it?
In all of Mexico, over 800 have been killed just this year. We're on the second day of February. There's been already 800 killed. And on Saturday night, and this is an incident you just referred to, 16 kids were slaughtered, were kids that were playing and were having a celebration. One of them was turning, I think, 16 or 17 years of age. At about 11:30 at night in one of the homes, there's 28 people. Gunmen entered and just started shooting. When it's all said and done, 16, mostly kids, are dead. What we're seeing now is that these groups are really becoming terrorists.
And at that point, those who've created the problem and got that reaction then openly offer the solutions to the problems they've created.
Is this a backdoor into, I don't know, more gun regulation?
Absolutely. Yeah, they have used this whole problem to try to further implement laws, regulation to restrict our Second Amendment rights to bear arms.
Exactly. And as you know, Andrea, early on in this administration, both Secretary Clinton and Attorney General Holder said that we ought to take steps to ban the sale of these assault weapons. They had been banned under President Clinton. President Bush lifted that ban. The White House quickly took that off the table. It was too politically volatile because of the opposition from the gun lobby and the political danger it would pose opposed to blue dog Democrats running in strong NRA districts in the United States. So that's been off the table. And as we've also discussed on this show, as you know, the one agency that's charged with policing this weapons flow has been allowed to languish. The president has not even nominated a director. I'm talking about the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms. And so as a result, sophisticated investigations into this gun trafficking flow have just not been taking place, according to officials who have been working on these cases. So all this combined has allowed this gun flow to increase. Yes, they've increased inspections at the border, but all the evidence is it's not doing the trick. This is a big problem.
Did you feel that ATF was partly perhaps to blame for the escalating violence in Mexico and on the border?
Yes, ma'am. I even asked them if they could see the correlation between the two. The more that our guys buy, the more violence that we're having down there. Do you think it's a contributing factor?
What was the answer? What do they say?
If you're going to make an omelet, you got to scramble some eggs.
You see, if you let society break down so there is more crime, you emphasize crime in other areas to be worse than it really is. You set up major events like Oklahoma, which we might get into. You get people in the four-letter word that controls the world, fear.
And think back on your upbringing in terms of how people related to fear and how fear was used, and you really recognize how powerful it is, but how evil it is at the base to use that to motivate people rather than the logic and the good sense of good argument.
Just when it seems as if the out-of-control drug violence in Mexico can't get any worse, it has. After the shock of several mass killings over the past 2 weeks, now a new victim, another public official killed, and the overwhelming emotion along the border seems to be fear.
They had a massive campaign going on to manipulate public opinion in the United States to set the stage for more gun laws in the U.S. with this whole 90%, 90%, 90%. Hillary Clinton, Biden, President, the Attorney General, barbershop quartet on that. They were getting that repeated by the media all over this country. And these are the dots that need to be connected. You had the president, the vice president, Hillary Clinton, the Attorney General Holder, sounding like a barbershop quartet with this 90%, 90%, 90%. They were trying to sell the American public on the idea that the guns the Mexican drug cartels were getting were coming from the United States. What Fast and Furious did and is open up a pipeline where it gave some substance to the lie that they were saying, that there were guns from the U.S. flowing to the Mexican drug cartels. And then when they'd catch those guns showing up at crime scenes down in Mexico, they weren't trying to trace them. They weren't tracking them. They lost track of all of them. But boy, when one of the guns that the Obama administration sent down to Mexico into the drug cartel's hands, when it showed up at a crime scene, then they went, aha, firearms from the United States. We need tougher gun laws in the United States. I believe this thing, if you connect the dots, it's pretty clear that this was about politics. It was about an anti-Second Amendment Obama administration agenda. They opened up a dealership. They opened up an illegal pipeline. They sent thousands of guns to Mexico. And it'd still be going on today if Agent Brian Terry hadn't been killed and some of those good agents down the line couldn't stand the stench of it anymore and risked their jobs and careers and started to speak out.
New fallout this morning over the failed government gun-running operation known as Fast and Furious. We're learning that the main target of the sting operation was busted 3 different times and then released.
New documents appear to show that back in 2010, agents of the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms picked up the main gun-running suspect. But then for reasons that escape us, they let the guy go.
So now we find out that their #1 target was arrested 3 times and still no intervention. The evidence suggests that the ATF did as much to keep Acosta out of jail than to put him in.
In April 2010, police arrested Acosta on this Phoenix street with cocaine and handguns hidden in his truck. He was released and not charged. In May, immigration agents stopped Acosta at the Mexican border with 74 rounds of ammunition hidden in his car.
74 rounds of AK-47 ammunition hidden in his trunk. Agents arrested him and called the ATF agent who was working the case. Acosta told her that he was going to Mexico to help set up a drug trafficking business at a birthday party of a big marijuana dealer and the right-hand man of Mexico's most wanted man, El Chapo Guzman, leader of the Sinaloa cartel. Well, the ATF had already known that Acosta and his gang had bought 1,100 assault weapons for $700,000. How? Well, they had telephone pole-mounted cameras outside his house, and they saw money and guns change hands. Well, now they actually had Acosta smuggling ammunition illegally. So what happened? They let him go. The case agent wrote her phone number on a $10 bill and told him to call when he returned to the U.S. Well, he did come back, but there's no evidence that he ever called or cooperated.
Then in October, a surveillance camera attached to this telephone pole captures Acosta firing a handgun purchased illegally by an accomplice, Sean Stewart. Police recover 15 shell casings from the shootout.
Manuel Celis Acosta is the suspected ringleader who allegedly transferred 2,000 weapons to drug cartels. And now Fox News has exclusive video of him in a shootout with an illegal weapon, and still police let him go.
The most wanted man in the Fast and Furious investigation, caught in the act on a government camera, firing 10 rounds from this .45 caliber handgun. Yet Manuel Celis Acosta remained free to traffic thousands of guns to Mexico.
2 of those arrests happened right here in the Valley. Now, Phoenix police say that they have forwarded both cases to the county attorney's office. In the first case, no charges were filed. In the second case, Acosta was held on charges of illegally discharging a firearm within city limits. But because he was let off the hook the other times, some lawmakers believe that he was being protected by the government as an informant.
The new revelation: the ATF may have been investigating an FBI informant.
The ATF was attempting to identify the man financing a gun trafficking ring. But investigators have now found that the Drug Enforcement Agency and the FBI already knew who that man was. They'd even turned him into a confidential informant.
Congressman Issa has issued subpoenas to the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms to get to the bottom of this.
And Senator Grassley also.
Okay, and the Federal Department of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms refuses to comply with the subpoenas, which if you or I did, they'd come and arrest us. So how are they going to get away with this?
Yes, that's against the law. That's against the law, as you mentioned, Judge.
I mean, I don't know how the federal government works. Everybody's got to sign off on something, especially something like this. But we don't know who that person is yet. Is that what you're telling me?
With all due respect, I'd be surprised if we're going to see a document that somebody signed off on that said you can let guns walk. I'd be surprised if we see something like that.
Would you agree that?
But I don't know. I don't know.
We don't know. We don't know who was in charge of making that final, it's time to send the guns to the enemy of Mexico, the drug dealers. Which is phenomenal to me.
Now, there's 93,000 documents, 93,000 documents that you're not giving this committee. And you're saying, well, the separation of powers prohibits you from doing that. That's baloney.
The Department of Justice, Madam Chairwoman, expects others to comply with subpoenas, yet they will not do so themselves. For those watching at home, what would happen to them if they ignored a summons for jury duty? What would happen to them if they ignored a grand jury subpoena? What would happen if a committee of Congress demanded documents and they summarily refused to cooperate? Madam Chairwoman, they would be sanctioned, fined, and probably jailed.
When are we going to hold Eric Holder to the same level of accountability that you or I would be held? If we got a summons or a subpoena, it's not an option for us not to comply with it. He's been warned. We've been patient. In my judgment, in some instances, we've been too patient. We've been more patient with him than police would be with you or me or any of your viewers. It's not a political exercise to me. It's a law enforcement exercise. He needs to comply, or he needs to tell us what legal privilege he is citing that keeps him from having to comply, and he hasn't done either one.
You had the basis for this contempt charge for quite some time now. You've talked about documents that you didn't get, how long you've been waiting for them. Why not move forward more quickly on it?
The Department of Justice and the Attorney General specifically will not provide documents properly, legitimately requested. So I am left with no choice, Madam Chairwoman, but to offer an amendment cutting the Department of Justice appropriation.
I know you're extremely serious about this Fast and Furious investigation. I know that you're very unhappy that the documents requested have not been turned over for Congress, and I know that there's the beginning steps of looking for a contempt of Congress charge against the Attorney General. This is something different. Tell me your idea.
You know, Greta, we're limited in our ability to get the Attorney General's attention, and one way you can get it is to start cutting appropriations. I cut appropriations from senior executive officials within DOJ. and then Jason Chaffetz today cut more money from the appropriations bill. I don't know what else we can do. I have appealed to him on the basis of respect for the rule of law. I have appealed to him to treat this as a criminal justice matter and not a political matter. It's been over a year, and we can't get 1/12 of the documents that the Inspector General has. So when I go home and I'm asked, or when I go on your show and I'm asked legitimate, what's going on with Fast and Furious? I don't have any idea, because the Department of Justice, which I hold in a much higher position or in higher stead than any other cabinet official, I have higher expectations for him. And he won't comply with a subpoena. Greta, what would happen if you didn't show up for jury duty? If you were summoned for jury duty and you didn't show up, what would happen? You'd be in jail. So how can the Attorney General act any differently than an average citizen? That's my point. And if I can't get his attention through a committee hearing, then we'll get it with money. It's about respect for the rule of law. I don't know why the Attorney General doesn't just give us the documents. They may exonerate his department. How do I know? He must know something. You know, you were an attorney, Greta. When one party doesn't turn over documents, there's a presumption that those documents must not have been very favorable for you. That's the only thing I'm left to conclude, is there's something in these documents he doesn't want us to get, and he's willing to cut his employees' salaries to keep us from getting it.
Where there is a very, very serious effort to have a vote by the House of Representatives to ask a federal judge to hold him in contempt. The House can do it alone. His Democratic friends in the Senate cannot help him out. And if the House votes to hold him in contempt, they will hire a lawyer to prosecute the Attorney General before a federal judge. Even John Mitchell, Richard Nixon's Attorney General, who went to jail, was not held in contempt by Congress. Eric Holder may very well be.
The possibility of a proceedings for a contempt of Congress citation, what will be the determinant factor in your judgment?
Well, Lou, I'm a Christian. I believe in Christ's teaching that, in fact, you don't have to pay to pray. You don't have to pay to go to temple. I also believe in the redemption of souls, and I believe that there's an opportunity that we will get cooperation and I won't have to seek contempt. And so I'm going to hold those hopes, all of those hopes, open for the time being.
Issa threatens Holder with contempt. See, they got the dirt on Issa. Oh, you didn't know about that? In 1971, an Army sergeant claimed that Issa stole a Dodge sedan from an Army post near Pittsburgh. The sergeant said he recovered the car after confronting and threatening him. Issa denied that in 72, but this is happening over and over again. Issa and his brother allegedly stole a Maserati sports car from a car dealership in Cleveland. He and his brother were indicted for car theft, but the case was dropped. So this just keeps happening. This is not people making this up, obviously. You know, if somebody says once you were caught doing something bad and you get away with it, fine, but 3 times. In 79, Issa and his brother allegedly faked the theft of Issa's Mercedes-Benz sedan. They were charged with grand theft auto, but the case was dropped by prosecutors for lack of evidence. This just keeps popping up over and over again, Wayne.
Right, and the most hypocritical thing about Issa is he made all of his fortune in California by selling car alarms.
That's where he made all his money. Problem, reaction, solution.
Every American should be enraged at the slow pace to get the information. It's now been 13 months. It really isn't that difficult to find out who did it, who authorized it, whether that person's still there. And the idea that this family is to continue to suffer and we Americans have to sit and watch this go down without any information is absolutely appalling, Congressman. I just don't understand why that answer shouldn't have been available a year ago. This is 13 months late.
Well, and this is one of the areas in which we have a serious disagreement with the Attorney General. He's waited 12 months for an investigation that's still ongoing. Hopefully the IG will wrap up her investigation. But this is one of the problems in Washington is the speed is too slow.
I mean, well, it doesn't have to be. If the IG can't move on this, get rid of that IG. Get someone who will get the investigation. The Attorney General says he didn't authorize it. Well, did someone above him authorize it? Did someone at the White House authorize it? Did someone below him authorize it? It really simply isn't that difficult. It really isn't. This is just so bizarre, and it doesn't look any better, any prettier every single day when more information is not forthcoming. If the IG can't get it, get rid of her and get someone who can get the information.
Well, you're right. And Greta, I opened up very tough on the Attorney General, made it very clear that the information that I believe Congress has a right to If I can't get it and get it soon, we will go through the contempt procedure.
Why not just
and
call,
as you know,
subpoena each one before Congress, forget the documents, just put everyone under oath and say, did you do it? And keep going up the chain of command, and you get no, 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 no. Eventually we get yes. Or if it turns out you don't get a yes, but then the documents later show someone is lying, you have yourself another situation.
This Fast and Furious thing, which started in the Bush administration, has been a disaster from the beginning. And I have seen some of the Justice Department's responses. And were I a neutral judge looking at this, I would say that is not responsive. You did not comply with that subpoena. On the other hand, Congressman Cummings' complaint is legitimate. The Republicans leaked internal documents today before members of the House even saw them, accusing the Attorney General of committing crimes. And now they have to find a prosecutor willing to prosecute.
Sometimes the leak is plenty and the prosecutor's not necessary.
Well, right. I mean, to the extent that this is political.
Issa is doing a whitewash, honestly, because he knows that they did it under Bush. And he's just kind of playing the field, oh, we're going to keep this a left and right paradigm thing when they're both sides are doing it. And that's what really pisses me off.
What would be the tipping point for you in terms of actually pursuing a contempt of Congress charge? And how would you enforce that? Because isn't it the DOJ you normally turn to enforce such an attempt at holding somebody in contempt?
if we vote out of our committee and out of the House, it then goes to the U.S. Attorney in the District of Columbia, and in that court,
and who's his boss?
Well, that's one of the challenges is
Eric
will
Holder.
he respect...
They're talking about criminal contempt, meaning the House of Representatives would have to persuade the Justice Department to prosecute the head of the Justice Department.
It's 0 to 100, the % chance in your mind that this man will be prosecuted.
0.